this video, we are going to create gypsum board ceilings. Again, you're going to have the suspended acoustical tile ceilings throughout all of your project, other than in your restrooms. In your restrooms, you are going to have a gypsum board ceiling. We would need to first go in and set this up correctly. So I'm going to go back to my file, and I'm going to go back to my level 1 ceiling plan, which is where I'm at, and these are my restrooms. The first thing I want to do is I want to go over here to my Manage tab, and I want to go to Materials, and I want to do a search for gypsum board, and I want to create one called gypsum ceiling board. To do that, I can come down here and I can do create new material, and you'll see I have default new material. If I right click on that and do rename, I'm going to call this gypsum ceiling board, and I want to come in here and edit it. So I'm going to modify my gypsum ceiling board for this to be 127, 127, and 127, and say OK. And then I want my pattern to be gypsum plaster, and say OK. And I want that color to be 0, 0, 0. And I want this pattern to be sand. And I also want it to be 0, 0, 0. If we do not do this, this ceiling will not show up as anything in your plan, in your ceiling plan, and you may think that you don't have something there. That's why we want to make sure that we create this. And I'm going to say apply, and I'm going to say OK. Now I can go back here to my architecture, and I can go back to ceiling, and I have one that I can start with in here. Remember, I had a gypsum wall board on metal stud. So I'm going to start with that one, but we're going to edit it, and we are going to duplicate it, and we are going to call this our gypsum ceiling, and say OK. And then we're going to go in here to the structure, and we're going to edit it. You'll see the structure here is metal stud 3 5/8. That's fine, we'll leave that. But what I want to change right here is I want to change this. I want to use my gypsum ceiling board, and I want to say OK. And again, I'm going to leave it at 5/8, so all of that is fine, and I'm going to say OK, and then say OK. Now I'm ready to start putting my ceiling in. So I'm going to go back to architecture, I'm going to go to ceiling, and I want to find my gypsum ceiling that I just created, and I want it to be at 9 feet. If I do automatic ceiling and I place it, now you can see it has a pattern to it, and I can tell that the gypsum board is there. So now if I go look at my section, you'll see here in my bathroom I have my metal stud with my gypsum board on it. Over here I have my acoustical ceiling over here. So that is all set. Now, something I need to do, I'm going to go back to my level 2 plan, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put me a floor in. And again, it's that type of floor. And for now, I'm just going to make a rectangle here. And I'm going to say this area here is going to overlook down into my other areas. So if I put that in and say no, and now if I go look at this section, you see I have my floor in there. Down here I have my ceiling. So now if I go and I look at my 3D view back on my level 1, and I zoom out, And I changed this to realistic. You see, I have this nice big gap between my ceiling and my floor. We don't want that. We have to create something called a bulkhead. You'll see that it talks about the bulkhead here. A bulkhead is a portion of wall that hangs from the floor above and creates a closed perimeter for a ceiling system to tie into. If I go back to my level 1 plan and I get me a wall, I use my 4 7/8 inch wall, and I set that wall with the base constraint at level 1 with an offset of 9 feet. That will put it at the height of my ceiling. And I set the top constraint to the second floor. Basically, I'm having a 5-foot high wall that's going to be 9 feet off of the floor. So I can see where the edge of my floor is at. So now I'm going to go back to that wall, and I'm going to set the base constraint to level 1, and I'm going to do the offset at 9 feet, and I want it to go up to level 2 and say apply. And now I'm going to, I don't want it to be my center line, I want it to be core face interior. And for now I'm just going to draw this in here, and then I can come back and adjust it as I need to. So now if I do a section through here, if I want to align it, if I go to my modify tools and do align, I want this to stay where it's at, and I want that to move to there. So now if I go back to my level 1 and I do my camera view, now I have my wall there. Now the next problem I have is I can see where the ceiling and the wall are. So a little trick is to go back to that section that we were just looking at and take this wall and just move it about 1/32 of an inch to where it's just barely outside my wall. Now if I go back to my 3D camera, so I can see the slab and the ceiling in this, but when I go to render it, and I'm just going to do a real quick one, and it's going to be kind of dark because I don't have a lot of light in here, and I'll just take it a second to render. Now you can see I do not see those lines. That is what you want to do there to accomplish that. If your opening is open on 3 sides, you'll have to do that on 3 sides, and you'll also need to do that on your 3rd floor. You will place ceilings in all of your spaces. I would prefer that you use 2x2 ceilings in your lobby areas. You can use 2x4 everywhere else, and then gypsum board ceilings in your bathrooms. Next, we'll be looking at placing light fixtures and diffusers.